All right, everyone, we are live. The internet is working today. Yesterday we hit the go live button and it just circled for us, and then come to find out the internet was down. But happy Genesis Week 2025, everybody. Dirk and Don, happy Genesis Week. Thank you guys for being here. How has the week been for both of you?
Just exciting. I think that's the word for me.
Dirk, yourself?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it was so exciting to see everything happen. Also, yesterday, the speaker was, live events there should always something happen, right? And now it was not our fault. It was, I don't know, I heard Cloudflare or someone was involved here, right? But what it makes it even more exciting is not everything is perfect, right?
Yeah, it's streaming can be stressful that way sometimes, for sure. So for me, Genesis Week, I think this Genesis Week was our most active in game that we've had. We had more events than ever. We had new events. That was really exciting. A highlight for me, I think, was definitely Sparklet Wars. It was really fun to see players coordinating, adjusting to the bots, to the drones, and then on the map being able to see the drones like on the ground after players defeated them, and the shield is back up. So that was a highlight for me. Definitely. Anything stand out to you guys specifically about any of the events in Genesis Week or any of the streams? You guys were on a couple streams as well.
Yeah, I have to say, the robot when he was I think that was also for me the most exciting part of it, right? So that the community came together and did those things. And then, of course, interacting with the community and being on the streams was a lot of fun.
So I really liked a lot of the glue we put together. So I think like a POV introduction was something that kind of like brought everything together, because now we can celebrate everything in a more immersive way as it happens. I really like the lore and the storylines that we kind of like interwin just to make things more playful, fun, and kind of like emotionally connective. So I think like, this Genesis Week felt really, really more, cohesive. And I think that's great.
Yeah, I agree. And some of those shots that we got from Sparklet Wars were so cool because we now had that POV mode for sure. So today's agenda, everybody, for those of you watching, first of all, thank you very much for joining us live. Appreciate it always. We are going to be taking questions from chat as they come through as we hit each topic. We're going to recap Genesis Week. We're going to recap some of the features that dropped. Then we're going to talk about the future. So this is called the Genesis Week Roadmap. It's not the official in-depth roadmap that we usually do in writing. That will come later. We're going to take a few topics and discuss them at like this 10,000 foot view level of what's coming in the future and how we're thinking about Upland. So I really think you guys are going to enjoy it. We also, at the end, have the community award. So you're not going to want to miss that. Who wins out of our nominees. And finally, our grand prize giveaway for the Sunflower Nursery. I caught myself this week. I kept saying Sunflower Seed Nursery, but it's Sunflower Nursery. It's just sunflower. It's not. There are sunflower seeds in a sunflower. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. Let's start by looking at some of the features that we dropped. So we're going to start first with simplified travel. And we'll start by just taking a look at the trailer that we dropped at the beginning of the week here, and then we'll discuss. And this was absolutely huge when it dropped. I think a huge quality of life feature. Dirk and Don, have you guys had a chance to try it out? Have you jumped in and seen the simplified way to travel now across Upland?
I mean, yeah, I was all over it with our, staging environments, and yeah, I think it's a long overdue feature, which is on us, but it's here, and I think it's not just the quality of life for existing players. Actually, I think this will make it easier for us to onboard new players and actually get them deeper into what Upland is, because we always knew that travel was a big friction. It's hard to figure out how to do, why to do, what is the sequence of actions, and even if we put it in tutorials, it's still friction. So I think that does a lot to undo the friction while still maintaining the concept of travel, which means that there are still travel routes you need to consider. There are still there's still resources you need to put into it in terms of time and the apex you spend for the travel, etc. So I think this was a big win for us.
Yeah, I agree. So we were able to keep up the concept, right? That somehow there's still some feeling of the real world in there, but at the same time make it much more easier for especially the newcomers.
It's like having our very own travel agent. We should have called it that, the travel agent. Except then we'd probably have to charge UPX to utilize it. But yeah, it's been good. It was highlighted in a couple events that we did, which was super cool. Obviously going to Hong Kong, players were able to get there from all across the world when we opened up Hong Kong yesterday. But then also in the scavenger hunts that we had, the scavenger hunt events, they spanned multiple cities, and traveling to each of those cities has never been easier. You could just go to the city, click on the property, hit that travel button, and then head there. So long awaited, but has been well received, and rightfully so. With that, we also dropped POV mode. So let's take a look at that trailer and then discuss. And this one was huge. This is actually my favorite of the two, but let's take a look at the trailer. There's POV mode, which I think changes everything. We are now 3D, and you could just get in there and see everyone's directions. Neighborhoods have a feel. They have a character to them. I think it's so much more immersive. Dirk, have you had a chance to try out POV mode? What's been your impression so far?
Yeah, of course. No, I tried it out, and it was always, what we always envisioned, right, our Upland to be, that we will be able to somehow walk through it, that we have this kind of immersive exploration capabilities, and that's, that is just so awesome, because I think all the map assets, everything becomes so much clearer. I mean, we had this kind of POV mode, as everyone probably knows, in somehow in car racing already, but it was different, right? Because obviously it was the streets, but you were on the ground at least, right? But now you have it also. You can do it by walking through the cities, And what is so important now is showcases much better, everything concerning creativity. Right, because now I see what people have, all these different statues and map assets, you find, and it's much better to really literally walk around them than just to seeing them from the top, right? And then going forward, right? I mean, let's see how it's going to enhance the gameplay. Just think about treasure hunting and so on. So what could be possible, of course. And I love, that the community, is really all over it, right? All the buzz, right? And I cannot wait to see all my X-Stream or on all other socials, right? All the different shots people are going to do going forward.
Yeah, we've already seen some really cool ones on social that players have shared. For sure. Don, what do you think? How does this change Upland and the experience of Upland going forward?
Again, so the immediate way it changes is just the level of immersion that I think just went, tenfolds up. But you can imagine a lot of cool features. I mean, Dirk mentioned treasure hunting. Imagine a treasure hunting mode where you actually, so, maybe a step before that, what if we can manifest you as your 3D avatar and you can walk around the city instead of sending, right? As an alternative that takes basically time and navigation. Imagine like a treasure hunt mode that, people get to be their 3D characters, and then first to win, but to get there you actually have to run or walk, etc. Imagine that if you run, you get exhausted, you need to whatever, grab an apple from an apple tree that's being that you find along the way. So there's a lot of fun things we can go there. Again, like everything we do, we try to put the foundations first and then build on top of it, and you can see that how that's developing even Genesis week to Genesis week from one year to another.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to see what happens here. I do think immediately it puts map assets front and center, and also these scenes. Like it's been a lot of fun to go because the 2.5 mode you could look from the top down and see stuff happening, but now when you go down and you're right there at ground level, you can see this. Look at this person in their yard is they have someone mowing the lawn and stuff like that. So really, really cool to see the scenes that players have put together. Here are some of the shots that players shared with us. And I think like right here, you could see right away, like this neighborhood, because of the ornaments that are on, has a very distinct feel that I don't know comes across from bird's eye view necessarily, right?
Absolutely. It does not. No, I agree. It's so much more. It's more immersive. That's what the metaverse is about, right? And when you're on top, it just feels too much 2D-ish, right?
You know what I want to see, David? I want to see now previews of speedways done by speedway owners. Kind of like turn into video and then use that to promote the speedways, because again, like when you view the map today, you have like whatever hundreds and hundreds of speedways spread around as black dots, and there's in order for you to explore each and every speedway, you have to go and race there to actually see it. Now you can actually have like previews, which I think is going to be super cool for racing.
Yeah, and on top of that, it encourages players to decorate their properties along those speedways and there are some that are really decorated well and they're coordinated. Highlighting those, I agree, would be super, super cool. We also got this one from Coach Funk, but check it out again. This is his neighborhood. This is his cul-de-sac, and just has a vibe, has a feel to it that, again, I don't think comes across just from bird's eye view.
100%. I love it.
The one thing that made me laugh about this image, though, is literally on this cul-de-sac, there is 4 shops. You could get anything you want here, anything you need, all in one cul-de-sac.
So here's like a perfect example of like how creativity and imagination using the Upland tools creates a whole experience, right? So there's the concept of like, okay, where do you have cul-de-sacs in other games, like, right? Like just and then taking over it and then setting up your brand on top of it. I love it. This is what Upland is about. It's great.
Yeah, let me ask you this, Don. So we can see the stars in the sky behind, and it's like a nighttime thing. Do you think we'll ever be able to go to daytime weather? Weather cycles.
I do. It's a great question, because also it's a question of, is there an Upland day or night, or is it per the location of the world, right? So it doesn't make sense that it's day, both in San Francisco and in whatever Hong Kong, right? Like,
yeah.
So yeah, is there? Yes, of course. And like everything, we have to fit it into our development roadmap. But again, I think it just adds more to the immersion. So super important, super doable.
Yeah, dynamic skies would be so cool.
And by the way, not just the sky, it could also be the lighting, right? So you see daytime lighting here. You can have nighttime lighting as well, in terms of like how the system operates. But again, like everything, that's part of what we're talking about today, roadmaps and future. And we want to do everything, but we can only do what we can do, and that's what the roadmaps are for. That's what we love, hearing the feedback from the community of what they think is important, and so on. So
just seeing in the chat here, people are stating there should be snow there, or maybe tornadoes. I don't know.
Tornadoes
reminds me of these natural disasters.
Well, no, but tornadoes can be annoying in that they can randomly reassign your map assets, and then I need to fix that. I need to reset them.
Or you could get insurance. There could be insurance companies. There could be a whole meta venture business where we replace your items there if you lose them during a tornado. But
yeah, exactly.
Next up, this one was really cool because this is the neighborhood where these were D-Tech's designs, and he won one of our design contests where his designs are only available in this neighborhood. And again, while we were able to see that from the map, you can see that having these unique designs completely changes the feel now when you're able to get down on this ground level. Has almost like a frost punk gothic, futuristic gothic feel to it that I don't know came across from our previous view. That vibe, that description. So,
and again, maybe now it can inspire to create new, and create and contribute new types of buildings along that route to that neighborhood. So you get even more variety, more diverse. Again, the options are endless.
Yeah, 100%. So we're going from this like crazy future gothic feel to this is like Americana right here.
Suburbia.
And one thing I noticed here, and shout out to whoever created this, but if you notice on this first property, first of all, putting fences around your yard, players had to do this one fence at a time. So that took time and dedication. So shout out to everybody who did that in this neighborhood. But also behind that first car, it's like a camper right behind it. And you could see the scenes that they've created with the car. It looks like he's getting ready to go out on a camping trip. Super, super cool. And again, POV mode has enabled this as well. Have you guys played with fences at all? Put any fencing on any of your properties?
If not, actually, is there actually? To be honest, are there multiple stores where you get fences? Or?
Oh yeah. There's tons of fences out there. It takes dedication though. Well done, because again, it's each section of the fence that you have to line up perfectly and make it look well. So doing this,
there's even a curve there, right? I mean, you have to be really working.
Yeah, they did a great job on this. So this was super cool. And then the last screenshot we grabbed that players shared with us was this, and I think this one. I mean, those are all the chess pieces. There's some elves in there, gnomes. There's some monsters back there. Really highlighting how map assets can come to life in Upland. So if you're a creator or a designer for map assets, now I think is the time that the cream will rise to the top, because you can share them off in ways and show them off in ways that previously just weren't available. All right, before we leave POV, any closing thoughts on POV mode, POV view?
Yeah, I think I can, just encourage everyone to share as much as possible, right, on socials and wherever, but also maybe put the address right next to it, because otherwise it's hard to find it, obviously, right? And when you want to check it out yourself, so that's always something, we should probably also maybe automate or so. People can do that.
Well, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think you can definitely on desktop, you can share a direct link to an address, if I'm not mistaken, but that will probably take you directly to the property card. But yeah, something we definitely need to investigate.
Yeah. Regardless, POV mode, I think, is super cool and opens up a lot of, like you said, shareability and immersion that just didn't exist before. Now, let's take a recap on Sparklet Wars. So a couple things happened this week with Sparklet Wars. First of all, it was our first PvE mode that we've ever had with Sparklet Wars. It's something that we've been working on for a few months, and it was a ton of fun. Players got to fight back the invasion in LA by the Collector Protocol and the drones that spawned from this boss fight. Now, what we're seeing here is the robot. For those that are watching that may have missed it, this was the robot with the shield up. And what players had to do, this robot spawned drones across the map, and those drones would move at different intervals. And the shield would not go down on the main bot here until those drones were destroyed, and then you could hit the main boss. And one thing that really stood out was, over time, as the contest went, the amount of cannons placed and pointed at the bot was insane. Like, there was lines everywhere. So the community, if you want to invade Upland, you're going to have to mess with the Upland community, and it's going to be hard to do. But the other thing here is lore legits. It was the first time we introduced lore legits last season. This was the first time that lore legits were tied to the lore in game. Idon, will you take a minute and just talk about that and what this means, for the future? Why lore? Why are we so focused on lore all of a sudden? What does that do for Upland, the game? What does it do for Sparklet Wars? Anything on lore legits here?
Yeah, I think there are several elements, and I think every good game and has some kind of a storyline, and that could be interpreted in various ways. But at the end of the day, the point is to make things, first of all, on a very high level, just more fun, more playful, but also to create emotional connection, right? So this, for example, it's not just about the cool comics and the funny story and basically having the story develop the way actually the season spans out, which is pretty cool. but you can see that it helps forming connection between players and elements inside the game. So right now we have a group of players that associate themselves as cypher cyborgs, and kudos for the three-peat, right? And some people identify as knights, some people identify as pirates, and hopefully with the introduction of Foundation Forces, people will identify with that. And we actually had a cool discussion that was moderated by Upland, and again, thank you, Upland, for hosting that discussion, where we found feedback, and it seemed like overwhelmingly, one of the questions that was asked, maybe let's take a step back, because why did we even have PvE, right? The PvE mode is our explorations of how we can improve Sparklet Wars and make it better, more fun, more competitive, etc. And one of the questions we asked basically the community was one way to solve the competition element in Sparklet Wars is by not allowing people to change their factions. Basically saying, hey, you draw a Sparklet Wars pass, whatever you get, if you got a pirate, you have to play pirate or not play at all, right? You can't trade it. And it sounded like overwhelmingly people were not interested in that. People want to be affiliated with that storyline. And this, I think, goes back to the demonstration of why stories are important, especially in the world of gaming. It just makes things more fun. You get more emotionally connected and attached, and it just increases the overall experiences for the players.
Yeah, 100%. Dirk, any thoughts on lore and more lore coming to Upland? How does this change the metaverse for you?
I mean, excuse me, it will create this, it will create even more emotional attachment for users, right? Because when you think about it, or for the players in the community, when you think about when Upland launched it in the first days, right? Basically everyone was the same. But now, as we are replicating the real world, right? Because in the real world, everything is individual as well, right? And you have some emotional connection to certain things. That's what drives us, right? And that's what defines also value at the end of the day, right? Because people are spending time around it, they're engaging around it. And that's what I think is also what what we can hopefully successfully replicate now, introducing more and more, characteristics and which represent then certain laws. But it's not just us doing it at the end of the day, it's also the community contributing to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Sparklet Wars, I think it was just fun to see, this new mode. So stay tuned, guys. There will be lots more discussions here as we figure out Sparklet Wars going forward. We do want to hear, like Adon said, from the community. We had our community discussion during Genesis Week. We're going to talk a little bit later about a new feature, targeted voting, and how this will affect Sparklet Wars and how you guys will be able to help shape Sparklet Wars utilizing that new feature going forward. So stay tuned for that. That brings us to Upland's dedicated app chain. Now, we moved to this a few months ago. So Don, maybe let's just take a minute and recap that move and what this means for the potential future for Upland, or what's the potential here for the future in Upland.
Yeah, I mean, again, just the recap again, for various reasons which we have dove deeply into in the post that we've shared with the community. We decided that it is not sustainable in the long run for Upland to remain on the EOS mainnet, which also got rebranded to Volta, being more focused on their side on DeFi banking as opposed to like an all-purpose chain. And we thought this was a good opportunity for us to take the next move, which makes more sense for Upland as a platform for the future, and that is to create an app chain that is dedicated to Upland. I think, again, a lot of reasons. We can go back there. I don't think we need to rehash them over here. And if anybody has questions, we can take some questions from the crowd. But I think overall, so let's separate it for a second. From a technical perspective, I think the migration was phenomenal. I think there was almost no disruption other than some, few hours of maintenance. We spent a lot of hard work, planning for it, doing it, practicing it, making sure that everything goes smoothly. And the result, once we came out, was basically, user experience remained exactly the same. only that now the chain element of Upland is delivered through the Upland ledger, Upland's dedicated Appchain. It is important to say that the Appchain is currently it's more centralized. So Upland the operator does control the block producers for the chain. But this is also, I think, the opportunity for the future for Upland, because right now we're in a place where it is much more effective and efficient to run the blockchain layer dedicated to Upland compared to how it was with the EOS mainnet. But this also opens up new opportunities for future re-decentralization that is done in a better and more effective way, and that also gives basically agency also to the community via potential different ways. And I don't know, maybe Dirk, if you want to add to that, or kind of like maybe go there next.
Oh,
you're on mute.
Dirk, you're muted.
Gosh, the old
There you
problem. Yeah. So I think, no, you pretty much said it all, right? I think, but with the app chain now, we have other opportunities. We're looking to lots of new things which we can also do in terms of interoperability. As you know, we're working with OMA 3 on certain things. So stay tuned for some news coming out in the near future.
Very cool. On some of that future, Recurrier in chat, and I've seen this said by a few players, has said, I want to be a block producer on the Upland chain. Is that a possibility of something in the future? Is that something we're thinking about?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we, again, in previous, I don't think, did you want to take it?
Go ahead.
So in previous discussions, public discussions, again, I think we outlined some of the ways that the chain could be re-decentralized. One of these ways is exactly what Recurrier is suggesting, basically having the block producers being run by, elements that are not Upland operators, right? So it could be community members, could be other, commercial bodies, there's different permutations of that. So that's one way to decentralize the chain. The one thing that is very important to understand is, for that to happen, the chain needs to have a value-bearing token in order to be able to reward the block producers for their work. So that is kind of like a prerequisite, unless you come up with other mechanisms, which is doable for that reward. So basically the same way, alternative methods could be, the same way that you pay out block producers, you can pay out the decentralized one, but you can argue that is also centralized because you are buying them. So again, a value-bearing token for the chain is important for the concept of block production. Another way, by the way, which we've also articulated, is keeping the chain decentralized, but not under the ownership of Upland, the company, or Upland Me Inc., right? So in that scenario, there is an entity established that is a DAO that represents the community through either a new governance token or existing tokens or whatever the mechanism is. But then that entity takes over the chain in a private way. So in that way, decentralization is achieved by separation of control of the chain to the community and not for the operator of the game. So, and again, both these, and by the way, these are not necessarily mutually exclusive, right? So you can actually have hybrid approaches that introduce both of these concepts. But the point is that at the end of the day, this makes it possible, to empower the community with more control over the platform in the future. And it also opens up opportunities as well, that where people can then, create, so there are some resources that are created out of that eventually, with the growth of Upland, right, when Upland does resume mass adoption, actually also increases the value that all of the stakeholders hold in the platform. So again, we see a lot of opportunities. I can't say that we know which path exactly it will go down, but whatever we do, we will definitely do it together with the community.
Yeah. And also to say, we're doing a lot of research on that topic right now, as you know, because things have changed dramatically in this last 5-6 years. There have been so many different models coming out. To give you one example, Gala chain, right? I think, don't quote me on that, I think there are thousands of nodes that they sold, right? That was an approach, but there's many other directions we can go, and we just want to make sure that we're doing things right. Yeah, and and we're talking to lots of people in the space, so to understand what really the next steps should be.
Yeah, and you also, we collectively need to be also aware of the risks. I mean, just recently there was like you've seen what happened with ApeDAO. Again, they needed to kind of like roll back a bit from their decentralization strategy and kind of like re-centralize it for various reasons. But again, this is good because it's a learning experience from us. We are going to learn from all the different ways that DAOs were attempted to be established, what worked, what didn't, what should be right for Upland. But I think also we have a very unique system in Upland that allows us to put together complex ideas, such as, for example, separation of power, right? So, just imagine for a second, right? If there is that DAO, and let's say that DAO is responsible to make macro decisions, such as whatever, like what is the base yield, right? What are cities that are being opened, etc. But then what if the Upland player base, via our existing voting mechanisms, need to ratify all of these decisions, right? So now it's not enough for just the DAO to make decision. It needs to be a coalition between the DAO and the actual players in Upland that don't necessarily have interest in kind of like controlling the DAO, right? So how does that help? For example, it can prevent decisions being passed that are counterproductive or or have bad consequence for the player-based community. So that could be a very interesting system that we can put in place because we have these elements now. And it's very hard. It just demonstrates like, why is it better? Like a lot of projects, they start off by putting in the systems, releasing the tokens and letting them run, right? And hoping that they got it right. Whereas I think in Upland, we actually we develop systems, we see the community reaction, we see the engagement, and then we can start putting in together evolutions of these systems that actually make sense for the platform, right? So there's a lot less risk that you've made a bad decision. And as long as you put elements that allow you to kind of like both have checks and balances and also be able to make corrections, right? That guarantees a better chance of the longevity of the platform, of everything that we're doing. So I think that's super important.
Yeah, maybe since I think we want to touch DAO later, but since we're on the topic of the DAO, right? So I have the pleasure to work with a few DAOs also in the context of the OMA3, right? And it's very hard sometimes, right? Because DAOs, they always have, of course, where people can vote about everything, but very often it takes very long, and sometimes you have to just make decisions much quicker, right? So we have to take that in consideration. Then sometimes you have a concentration of voting power, right? What Idan just also briefly mentioned right just now is there's also a very big difference for us as Upland, because when projects launch, all they have is basically a token, and then people who buy a token, and they get maybe much more power. We have really this opportunity where we might have a token, and on the other hand, we might have which is decisive, but on the other hand, we have the whole platform on Upland, right, where there's also another there are different mechanics how people can vote, and this gives us, not just the downsides of DAOs, which they are, right, which gives us actually an advantage. It's also quite very, very unique. Yeah, and one thing also we have to have in mind is that we can maybe overcome what has, for instance, been the problem of the ApeCoin Foundation, right? That the governance was really chaotic, right, and that the funds were mismanaged. Also, now we have this control by multiple governance bodies here, and then also we have some kind of a better oversight. So we really have the opportunity to create something which is very, very unique in this space, and hopefully will then succeed, and will maybe also the blueprint for other projects to follow.
Yeah, I mean, chat has a lot of suggestions here, and I'm sure as we move forward and in the future, if we move in that direction, the community definitely, we'll take your suggestions, and a lot of interesting suggestions here for sure. On that, you both were on podcasts this week, and you both had an opportunity to talk a little bit about Sparklet and Sparklet on centralized exchanges. Dirk, let's start with you. One of the things that we talked about recently is focusing more on decentralized exchanges. What lessons have we learned from Sparklet being on centralized exchanges, and what is our path forward here?
Yeah, maybe let's tell you a little quick history of tokens in general, right? When you think about it, back in 2018, 2019, when we launched Upland, closed beta in 2019, open beta in 2020, As everyone probably knows, that we are a US-based company, and we were always very careful what we do because we always wanted to stay regulatory compliant. So it took us quite a while to come up with a concept where people would actually be able to trade a token outside of Upland. But what has happened between 2020 and 21, and I tend to say those projects which have launched their token that time, they always had the advantage of being early, right? And and then becoming portfolio of professional managers and so on. That was, but then things have changed, especially in 23, late 23, and then 24 was just insane. And I mentioned it also the other day. I don't have 100% the correct numbers here, but like last year, on a monthly basis, 1 million tokens were launched, right? And what were these tokens? You all know probably all these predominantly meme tokens. And that's resulted in, there was a lot of activity, trading activity, and focus on those, and a lot of liquidity went into those tokens, and mainly also on decentralized exchanges. And that was really also for us hard to stand out as Sparklet, as with our really token, which was not a meme token, obviously, which is a utility token, right? Because you had to compete against the noise. Because one objective which we had back, what we also mentioned when we launched the token last year, is that we would be more visible to the Web3 community, because we always, as you all know, we always want to get more users into our platform. So unfortunately, this did not materialize as we expected to be, right? So that was one thing we have to admit. Okay, lessons learned, just the way it is. On the other hand, is also by now being on the centralized exchanges is, at the end of the day, economically not really worth for us, because the reason is because you always have to support it, you have to take care of it, you have to maintain it. In the sense of, you have to pay liquidity providers like market makers and so on. And so the economic outcome for the moment is not that worth for us. And that's one of the reasons we said, okay, you know what? We are going to focus now on decentralized exchanges, or called DEXs, where people can go and exchange their Sparklet if they want to, or can buy more Sparklet if there's not enough available for them in the app, so they can do that. And of course, then can always bridge them in, or respectively bridge them out. What we're also going to do is we're going to have more token partnerships. So next week we're going to announce one, another token partnerships, where we are going to create more liquidity pools with other tokens, in order to have more liquidity out there, more depth for our token.
Idon, anything to add to that?
No, I think they covered everything. I think, again, the main point was, one of our, again, biggest motivator for launching Sparklet as a tradable token, other than giving the community a pathway to trade it and kind of like be able to actually, either sell or buy it openly, not just from Upland, was the expectation of growth. And I think once, again, like Dirk said, but I think it's important to emphasize, once we see that didn't play out the way that we hoped to, then we want to make sure that this does not become just like something we pour platform resources into without the benefit. But we still want to provide the value to the community, again, of being able to trade. And I would say also one thing, and ties back to one of our previous announcements, is that what we were hoping to see is there is going to be equal demand for Sparklet, both outside and inside the game, because a lot of our players don't have either the skills or the motivation to buy Sparklet outside of the game. So a lot of our players still buy Sparklet inside the game. So the downside, that we were not seeing that demand effect on market price outside of the game. So one of the things that we adjusted was that we are using some of the proceeds from Sparklet sales inside the game to actually buy Sparklet to repurchase Sparklet in the market. And we have started doing that actually in the past month through, and it's going to be focused predominantly on decentralized exchanges. So again, we are trying to, make this whole ecosystem work and still keep Sparklet as utility token and available for players to interact and use, get inside the game, but also if they choose to trade it outside of the game.
Excellent. That covers all things Sparklet and the dedicated app chain. And now, everyone, it's time to get to the fun stuff. Some of the new features that are coming, some of the new things that we've been working on behind the scenes here. And first up is targeted voting. Fun fact, by the way, this is actually the terraformer from when voting first dropped in Upland. So I was able to find that, and I thought, oh, super cool. It looks awesome. So congratulations to everyone who was able to pick up the I voted terraformer. But targeted voting, Idan, what is it? Why is it important? Why is it something that we're working on? And what are some possible use cases for targeted voting here in the future?
Yeah, so I mean, the feature as itself is not a complicated one. It basically means that instead of being able to, up until now, all votes that we did in Upland were basically, were available for any player in Upland, any Uplander or above to vote on. This gives us the ability to actually create, resolutions and suggestions for people to vote on, but that are only relevant for a specific subset of the player base. So, for example, what does that allow us? So, let's say, we had a decision point in game design for racing, and, we wanted community input towards it, right? It makes a lot of sense for us to ask that for a vote for anybody who has actually or is actually engaging in racing, as opposed to just out putting out in the open for all Uplanders to vote on, right? So this allows us to do very, very specific and targeted questions. It also opens up a very important concept that we've always had in mind, and that is virtual local governance, right? So local governance in the metaverse. So, for example, if there are resolutions that are relevant for only specific cities or for only specific types of cities, or maybe even specific neighborhoods, and which we'll probably touch in a few secs, then you can put that now forth, that in combination with Upland's feature of home addresses, basically having to declare, exactly what is the address that you live in Upland, comes together to some very powerful governance options. Again, in the later future, we envision also that if the community can actually put forth proposals for voting, again, it doesn't make sense that everybody just hits everybody, right? It does make sense that communities get together and actually vote on proposals that are relevant for these communities, etc.
Yeah, agreed. In fact, Rodrigo said inside neighborhood voting would be very cool. I know Rodrigo runs the Quellwood node, so that could be an example where Rodrigo puts forth a vote just for Quellwood residents, and they get to vote on it. Because obviously you don't want the whole Upland community vote on that, but sets up a lot of cool opportunities and options in the future. Dirk, before we move on, anything you want to add or take away from targeted voting here?
No, I think targeted voting connects to the whole idea about, okay, what does it mean to create a DAO for Upland, right? And how will the DAO look like? But we touched on that a few minutes ago, so I think it's all covered.
Excellent. So with targeted voting, with this idea of local neighborhood voting, we have parks and park structures that we're working on. And this is an example, Idan, where perhaps there could be voting for mayors for parks. Let's take a moment and just review that aspect of parks, and then talk a little bit about what we foresee here and what we're working on with parks and park structures.
Yeah, so again, the concept here, and again, always has been on our minds, right? And now I think we're going to take the first steps to, try and make it happen, is basically communal spaces, right? So spaces that are not necessarily owned by a specific player, but they're owned by a community. And again, the Uplands, and again, we didn't come up with it. The community came up with the concept of nodes and neighborhoods at the end of the day. And it makes sense for us that neighborhoods is basically the most let's say atomic manifestation of a communal unit in Upland. So you have your property, right, and then you have the neighborhood which you're a part of, which is your community, and those neighborhoods comprise the whole community that makes up a city, etc. And parks are going to be a very cool way for us to test out the first notions of communal spaces. And it also attaches very well to the later introduction of life in Upland that's going to happen most likely this year. So and this also obviously ties to targeted voting. And what we're going to do over the next probably few weeks is we're going to run a couple of experiments. We're going to take a very, very small amount of neighborhoods, and we're going to have them elect mayors for those neighborhoods. Again, you don't have to necessarily call it mayor, but again, we're going to have to, the neighborhoods would be able to select who is the representative that represents that neighborhood. That representative would be entrusted with a neighborhood appropriated Upland account. And that Upland account would have access to a park, and then the person who represents the community would be able to actually design the park and then enhance it later on with life, and have the entire community be able to contribute and maintain those beautiful parks that they set up. Now, the nice thing about it is, from a feature perspective, these accounts are kind of like recyclable, because we as Upland own the accounts, and every time a new representative is selected, their credentials will be reset. But those representatives are free to share the credentials with anybody within their communities that they want to help kind of like plan and maintain those parks. So these accounts are actually, we never encourage that with personal accounts, but we do encourage that people share the credentials with people from within the community to help them out with the task of building out the parks and maintaining them. So I think this is a very, very exciting feature, and I think we're going to see the first steps we're going to take towards that in the next few weeks. And like any features, this is going to be a test. We're going to see how it goes. If it's well received by the community, if people like the concept of neighborhood leaders, then we will enhance it. We will kind of like spread it to more and more neighborhoods. And you can imagine now the future where, okay, now you have these governance units of neighborhoods, you have an elected representative. Maybe in the future that representative can actually form proposals that then get voted by the rest of the community. And it will tie to another concept that we'll introduce a bit later in this roadmap update that I'll probably come back to.
Yeah. Now, what's on screen here is Central Park, which is absolutely massive. Is the plan for parks going to be one big piece? Will they be divided up into micro pieces? Has there been any thoughts or plans on that front?
Yeah, so first of all, parks would be at the beginning neighborhood centric, but absolutely, I think we should have city centric parks, exactly like Central Park or the Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, etc. So every city has also kind of like huge, main parks to treat. So the same concept can be utilized for cities as well. Sorry, David, I lost the question while I was ranting.
Will it be one big piece, or could they be split up?
So maybe that I think you have a slide on that, right, for the park structures, because
Yes.
Again, the another concept we're introducing is park appropriated structures, and these are going to be kind of like these things are going to be not appropriate for map assets, right? So these are like still mega structures that have to be built and are tethered to the ground, to the property, but they are kind of like modular, so you can still play around and create park designs. And the way we're going to do it is that each park is not going to be just one huge chunk of a property. It's going to be just carved out into property parcels within the park. So that allows you basically to plan ahead from the building perspective of the park, and then on top of that you can add map assets, life, trees, flowers, etc.
Yeah, and so this is for everybody watching. This is, correct me if I'm wrong here, these are like part of the mini structures that we can combine and put together as park structures, and then this would be an example of those mini structures coming together to make a really cool park structure in a local park.
Yep.
And then here is another example, and you can see it really will come up to the imagination of players, the coordination of neighborhoods here, and to really create these cool communal spaces. Now, these are just the structures. So imagine now these structures with life, trees, plants, intermingled within these. And I think what could be created, you combine this with POV mode, and what could be created in these communal spaces is really, really cool. Dirk, is there any park that you would love to see built up? I mean, Central Park is a given. I think a big park like that, but any other park that pops into your mind, or Any excitement here on your end for parks? What do you think?
Now you're testing my knowledge of parks around the world.
Very useful knowledge.
So, of course, here in San Francisco, we have the park, right, which is cool. And then Hyde Park, right? That's going to be interesting to see. But there are also smaller parks, like if you go to Paris, right, Parc Monceau, or right. It's. I think what's going to be interesting to see if the parks develop differently depending on their size, right, and what's going to be in them, right. That's also because in the big parks, in theory, you can have large fields of some random sunflowers, I don't know, or whatever we're going to have. But then in smaller parks, maybe there's a big, maybe one park is focused on water fountains, right? And they're creating the best water fountains, whatever. We have to see what comes out of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's park and park structures. Stay tuned. Very exciting. Everybody, remember, this all ties in as well with this localized voting. We're going to experiment and test a few neighborhoods here upcoming. So stay tuned for that as well. But that ties in perfectly with life. So Idon, let's do an overview of life. Is this a focus of Q3? Is it a focus of Q4? What's coming and what can players expect here with life?
Yeah, so again, we're actively working on implementing live. I think we've had two blog posts about it, one announcing and one taking a deeper dive into. So I do encourage everybody to go revisit those blog posts and see look about the mechanics. But again, the concept is pretty much both innovative and exciting and not too difficult to comprehend. The first, let's say, when you first meet life, you're going to meet it as a seed legit, and this is something that you buy in nurseries, which are basically meta ventures for seed legits. But in order to create seed legits, you'd have to spend Sparklet, small amounts. Again, you're not staking it, you're not getting it back, you're spending it. This is the first time we're going to see Sparklet being removed from the economy in favor of creating legit class of NFTs, in this case, seed legits. Once you have a seed legit, again, it's an NFT. At that point, it's an NFT. You can hold it, you can trade it, whatever. Most likely, what you want to do with it, you want to plant it. When you plant it somewhere, whether it's your backyard or it's a communal space owned by a neighborhood, that's where basically you burn the NFT, and that whatever you planted no longer becomes an NFT. Right, so you can trade it. If you sell the property, it's going to still be there, but it's no longer an NFT. It's more like something that is, part of that property, and then it begins its life cycles. Right, so again, every different type of plant, and we'll go over the first types of plants we're introducing. Every different type of plant will have a different life cycle trajectory. Like, what is the phases of its growth? How does it look like when it's alive or in dead? How does it look like in different cycles, right? So flowers can be either in or out of blooms. Maple trees, they can be basically, green, or they can be in change of color state, or they can be, at a state in the winter where it's just the branches and you don't have leaves, right? So there's and this is kind of like detailed in some of the matrices of life we've shared in the blog post. But then again, the last element is basically, how do you take care of life? So there are two elements. First of all, you have to feed it, and that's where Protem comes in. And again, this specific screenshot shows your ability to feed a plant, and you can do it on a plant by plant basis, but we're going to make things easy for everybody, and there's going to be a master feeding function from within your profile where you can just feed all your plant immediately, and it will, you don't have to worry about the amount. It will tell you what is the right amount, etc. But that's not everything, because there is another kind of like vector for life, which is well-being. So let's say if we imagine Protem takes care of your health, right? Are you alive or not? That's one vector. And the other vector is, how well are you doing, right? And that is done basically not by necessarily feeding or using resources, but that is done actually by going and interacting with the plant, kind of like on the map in Upland. And anybody can do it in favor of any plant that they come across. And you can imagine, again, it may sound a bit funny with plants, but I can give a very good example of, if you have a very, very delicate flower, like a tulip or something, and you may want to take better care of it and there is a it's arguable whether well-being is a feature for that type of a plant. So that would, well-being will be important for something like a delicate flower. Whereas if you imagine something like a patch of grass, okay, there may not be a huge point in taking care of the well-being of grass, right? So maybe, some sorts of plant of life will require less amount of attention, while some sorts will require more. Now, it may sound a bit absurd, but if you imagine life on the long run and you now imagine pets, okay, there's a very different, there's a big difference between, let's say, a dog who's just being fed compared to a dog who's both being fed but played with, interacted with, and has a very, successful psychological life. So, these two trajectories, they were not created for the sake of plants. They were created for the sake of the long-term vision of life in Upland.
I mean, it does make sense for plants. Most plants, like you take rose bushes, for instance, they do have to be pruned. If they're not pruned, they go wild, they get out of control, they don't look nice. So totally makes sense on that front. We did get a question in chat that I thought is interesting. Maybe we could speak to this a little bit. James Taylor asks, what about seasons in different locations? Like in the north, they lose leaves, but in Dallas, they just turn brown.
Yes, that's a great question. I can say at the beginning it would be global. There's not going to be a differentiation between the seasons in between different areas on the map, but not to say that it's not going to happen in the future.
Yeah, so, one thing that
in other words, just to make it clear, when it's winter for everybody in Upland and not specific places. At least at the beginning.
Yep. One thing that's exciting, we talked about, I can imagine you got a bunch of maple trees planted and they all turn red for fall, for instance. And then we discussed earlier, now that we have that POV mode, imagine different skies that are accessible, and just imagine the shots you could get. Like, it'll be the shots that will get, the screenshots, the beautification that players will be able, the customization that players will be able to do their property, I think is really exciting. And I think adds this next level layer to gamification. Our theme here for Genesis, and you can see how this theme ties in, everybody, as you're going through these slides, we're forging the infinite playground. Whether you're a racer, whether you're a treasure hunter, whether you're someone who's buying properties to add to your portfolio and flip them, whether you're a designer or a creator, or now, you could be someone that cultivates life in Upland. Yeah, gardener. There is, we're forging the ultimate playground here. There's gamification for everybody. Dirk, how about you? What excites you most about this new layer of gameplay that's coming?
I mean, there's a few things, right? So, of course, first of all, we're moving away from this, let's say, static property-based type of metaverse to dynamic living world, right? I think this is awesome, right? Because now things are changing. Each time you go, next day you go in, everything blooms and looks just much better. And then if it hasn't been maintained, then, well, looks the other way around. But that's so the dynamic approach is really, really cool. Then also combining with the other things we said before. Now, just imagining now, you immerse yourself in the POV mode and you walk through a garden of flowers or you've trees and so on. That's just awesome. And this also directly leads to the next thing. Is now players have even more possibilities to tell their story, right? Some people might like just I don't know, oak trees, and others like roses, and that represents also the players a little bit more, right? It ties into the lores of the players themselves, and everything gets somehow together. And last but not least, or let's say two more things, is one is we're going to have completely new economic possibilities, right? As you always know, we're promoting entrepreneurship in Upland, in the metaverse, and now people maybe have the opportunity to make more money because maybe they're creating an awesome property with awesome trees and plants on it now, or they're just having maybe they're lucky winner of the nursery and make some money out of that, right? So that's one thing. And then last but not least, and that's what I cannot really, picture now, but I hope there will be also more innovation around it. And of course, we're going to contribute to that. We're going to have, different seasons and, in the future, but also maybe the community comes up with completely new idea we haven't imagined at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Metaverse Millen, he wants a gardener meta venture where you pay to have your life items maintained. Super, super cool concept there. Super, super fun. Now, when life drops, we're dropping with a limited number of plants at first, Idan. And here you can see those on screen. There's 11 total, and you can see them broken down by category. So we've got trees, flowers, and then shrubs and grass as a category. Is this to just make sure everything is working right? Is this why? What is the plan here? Starting with these 11.
Yeah, so when we chose the first plants to introduce, we wanted to make sure that there's a wide variety in terms of categories. So there's a clear difference between a tree, a flower, and just general shrub or grassery. And these are meant to be, like the vision was, okay, we want to enable from the get-go people to create complete canvases. If somebody wants to do their entire backyard, right, now they have the tools to do that. Like, we didn't want just trees or just flowers or just, right, we wanted kind of like a good variety. The second thing is a constraint. Basically, we're not yet ready to do protem bearing type of plant. So you can imagine that an apple tree, for example, at the beginning is just a protem sink, but at the end, it starts producing protem to be harvested. So we're not there yet. So we wanted to avoid those types of plants and trees. And then the last thing what was important for us would be basically two vectors of being visually recognizable. So we wanted you to, again, if we introduce two different types of maple trees, you can imagine how, especially at low LODs and high zoom levels, you can't distinguish one from the other. So we wanted to be visually recognizable, but also iconic trees and flowers. So this is the list that we came up with. Absolutely just the beginning. Again, there's no reason why, there will be 20, 50, 100,000. And especially as we think about opening these things for user generation, and we touched about it with our interaction. Again, unfortunately, we haven't been able to kind of like kick off yet the species foundation, but the idea at the end of the day is that we're not responsible for creating all species of life, right? That we somehow rely on the community power of user generated content to be able to absorb it and take it into Upland. So the possibilities will become endless at the end of the day.
Yeah, grass has come up a few times here in chat, and just to clarify, this is
Grass
this? Sorry, say that again.
It's going to be grass patches, obviously, right? So it's going to be like patches of grass.
Yeah. So is it like decorative grass or grass that you walk on?
Sorry, like lawn grass. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's wrong.
Yeah. Oh, very cool. Very cool. And then how does that work with map assets? Will players eventually be able to layer those map assets?
No, we do not yet have the mechanics that allow you to overlap, to kind of like intertwine, to stack map assets on top of life or on top of each other. So it would be at the beginning, at the launch phase, it's going to be like a map asset, meaning that if you place it, you're not going to be able, unfortunately, to place anything on top of it at the beginning.
Okay, but can we? Is that on our long-term roadmap? That would be a feature that comes.
100%, yes. Anything, I think we can look at it as anything that makes cognitive sense.
Yeah,
is by default on the roadmap.
Okay, very good. All right, that is life, everybody. You can see we're getting closer. Again, it's a focus of Q3, Q4 here coming up. Very excited to see the initial stages of this drop, these first 11 plants come into Upland and see what players do with it. And now we're excited to talk about something that we've not really discussed before. Idan, I think you talked about it a little bit in the podcast you were on earlier this week, and that is residences. Residences is something that is coming to Upland, and it's something that I think ties everything we've talked about today together, from gamification, life. It ties together life. It ties together neighborhoods, neighborhood votings, mayor, the whole shot ties it all together here. So let's do an overview. What is residence? What is it in concept? How will it work? And go from there.
Yeah, so I think, again, another thing that we've always had on our minds and our roadmap, and I think we're finally in a place where we can start tying the knots together and putting it forth. And this is basically sparking the concept of I don't want to say human, maybe it's llama life into the metaverse, right? So I think if previously, whenever I know that the community, there was the concept always requirement, when can I rent out my properties, right? And it was always, I think, perceived that you're renting it out to other players, which I don't think was always our basically long-term target. But we envision Upland partly, again, Upland, everything is based on properties. It's a property trading game, but then there's a whole metaverse that's built on top of it. And now we are starting to look at the the angle of Upland that makes it the world's most powerful communal city building game. And residence is going to be a big part of it. And what are residents? Basically, imagine that Upland as a platform is going to have a finite amount of residents, and these residents are going to be determined in correlation to the amount of residential units that are built in Upland. But an important thing is, they're not going to be one-to-one to residential units. They're going to be a small subsection of the residential units. And now that means that everybody that has a residential unit is going to start to competing for residents. And once you have residents on the micro level, obviously there is neighborhood residents, there is city residents, there's a general population of Upland, and that population fluctuates in accordance with things that happen in the Upland economy. And now the real beauty of it is that it takes a community to really attract large amounts of residents. And this comes with introductions of new types of utility structures into Upland.
Yeah, and there's categories to these utility structures. So you could see that we have 5 categories that we're starting with here. So health and public safety, essentials, entertainment, employment, transportation, and logistics. Maybe give us an example, Don, or can you give an example of what each of these, what type of structure is under each of these categories, and then why do players want to build these structures in their neighborhoods and in their cities?
Sure. So just by the way, just a small corrections. Not all of this is about structures, but we can go one by one about it. But the idea at the end of the day is that you as a neighborhood want to attract as many residents that you can, and once you do that those residents get distributed within the neighborhoods according to the residential units. Now, if you imagine a baseline, right? If you have nothing but residential units, there's going to be a cap of how much residents you'll be able to attract. So if you just keep building more apartments, more luxury houses, whatever, it's not going to add, at some point, it's not going to be, it will not lead to an increase of residency in your neighborhood, because those imaginary residents will start demanding services. And these services are basically split into these categories. So health and public safety would be things like police stations, hospitals, fire stations, etc. Essentials will be things like grocery stores, right? Like, kind of like hardware stores, etc. Entertainment is going to be things like, theaters and coffee shops and restaurants, and also speedways, by the way, would go under that category. And then when you get to the last categories, right, employment will be more about factories and meta ventures that operate within these neighborhoods. And last but not least, transportation and logistics will be currently implemented by the amount of cars and things like maybe in the future buses, vans, etc., that are being parked in those neighborhoods. So all of this together will tie into an algorithm that will not be visible to the community. So, from month to month, it may change, but that algorithm will compile basically what we currently call the neighborhood's draw, right? Like, what is the neighborhood's ability to draw in residents? And then maybe to complete the picture, seasonality will have in the future also effect for different types of cities. So you can imagine Park City in Utah, for example, would be very attractive in the winter when it's ski season, whereas Lake Tahoe, for example, would be very attractive in the summer. South Lake Tahoe will be more attractive in the summer, and some cities will be neutral for that. So all of this together basically is represented by an algorithm that on a daily basis will basically redistribute all of Upland's residents across all of Upland.
Yeah, and as a player, will I be able to see the total amount of residents that I have in all of my properties, or is it just on a neighborhood basis?
No, absolutely. This translates at the end of the day to local residents, and the residents on a personal level, but your ability to kind of like affect the draw for your properties is very limited on a personal level, right? The most effective you can be with drawing residents is collaborating with your local governance, with your local neighborhoods, with your community.
Very cool. Metaverse Millen said, in the future, I see the yield being tied to resident mechanics. Is that something that's being considered?
Absolutely.
Is that likely?
Great idea.
Yeah, it's likely, it's there, it's going to be slow, right? Like everything, when we start touching economic parameters, yes, it may start with kind of like a very subtle structuring of how base yield is built up, for example, right? So that could be basically started as some kind of a boost to the base yield at the beginning, and we'll take these shifts very slowly. But absolutely, at the end of the day, high drawing neighborhoods will be rewarded in different ways, yield being one of the potential ways that they can be rewarded.
And Mass Chef is reading my mind here. Holy crap, it's SimCity on steroids.
So yeah, SimCity, but I think very, very important. Like SimCity, I mean, all of the successful, or at least the ones that I know, SimCity type of games are personal games. This is a communal SimCity on a global scale, which is something I think the world has never seen in a successful way before. Upland can be the first of that. And again, like I don't want this to, like, I don't know if I'm already envisioning some people saying, "Wow, why is Upland changing?" No. This builds on the entire concept, on the entire infrastructure. Everything at the end of the day ties to properties and virtual localities and everything we've envisioned for Upland. So now, basically, this is the time to make the next step there.
Yep. Rodrigo dropped in chat. When is this all starting?
So again, these are things we're actively working on. Both residents and life. We envision them to be deployed within 2025. Again, can't say that as a commitment, but these are things we're actively working on.
Very cool. Very, very exciting as well. Dirk, for you, from a community and culture perspective, you talked about stories before. You talked about telling your story. How do you think residents apply to that? How does it make Upland feel more like a real digital city? Like when you go to LA or you go to a neighborhood, what are your thoughts there?
Look, first of all, now Upland always felt kind of like a marketplace. You were trading properties and so on, right? But now it really feels like, like a populated world, right? At the end of the day, right? And then what does it mean, populated world? First of all, you will have, of course, community interaction directly there, but maybe also then in Discord, people are talking about their neighborhoods, about how to develop it further and so on. And this gives you also more cultural depth, right? What you have, because when you think about how it looks like in real life, right? When you go to a city, and you go to Paris, you go to New York, every city somehow has its own characteristics, and that's exactly what we think is also going to happen here, because it's going to be the people who are going to shape those different neighborhoods, right? And because you have now this everyday realism, I tend to say, right, where people go and perceive that they are somehow in a real world, but at the same time it's a virtual world, right? And that's going to be really interesting to see what people are coming up with, new ideas around, creating new economic and social hubs, which people will enjoy on an everyday basis. And it's going to be what is most importantly very diverse, right? It's not going to be just one fits it all. It's going to be very, very different, and it's going to be so interesting then to travel around in Upland, because it's not going to be the same buildings and everything. It's going to be vibrant neighborhoods, where different personalities, different kind of designs, they will inspire people to create something else, somewhere else new, or because they were inspired by others. And that's what Upland is about creation, value creation, and eventually also by making money out of that, because you're part of the value creation, and other people they appreciate what you have created.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that stuck out to me was the idea, or that I really like, is the idea that different cities there's now a reason to own different cities. So, for instance, Park City in the winter is going to be this destination point. Miami Beach in the summer, or Bermuda in the summer, may be this destination point. And it really adds to a unique feel and a unique lifestyle in each of those cities. Not to mention, I mean, every city in Upland now will be truly unique. So that's something that has stood out to me in talking about this here.
Yeah.
So we do have some structures to show off of what these will look like. So what is this is clearly a barber shop. Give an overview, Adon, here of what this means for why would, as a player, why would I want to build this in my neighborhood?
Because you want to build the essential score. So one very important thing is that we talked about public and health and public safety. We talked about essentials. We talked about entertainment. Now, the very big factor in the algorithm will be variety, right? So if I just have a neighborhood full of supermarkets, but supermarkets only, but then there is a competing neighborhood which has a wide variety of essentials. So it has barbershops and supermarkets and hardware shops and whatever is the essentials are. The more the variety, the better. So the neighborhood that has a better variety, and if equal amounts are, if it's apples to apples, so it's the same, let's say exactly the same amount of structures, but one neighborhood only has barbershops and the other neighborhood has a much deeper variety, the other neighborhood would have an edge for the draw of residents. So that's why, like, these different types of structures both will add to the visual aesthetics and the characteristics of the cities, but also will be important for you to be able to draw in residents.
Yeah. Now, keep in mind, these models, the colors aren't applied to these models. So you'll be able to make these unique for your neighborhood as well. The colors that are on there are the permanent colors to identify it, but the gray shell, you will be able to customize and make your own when you deploy those, just like with all the other structures. One of the questions came up, said there's a lot of communities or neighborhoods with small properties. These structures, for instance, the supermarket structure, will come in different sizes as well.
Yep. Absolutely. Like all of our structure types, right? There's a wide variety and everybody can find their own mix.
Yeah, it's super cool. One thing that I really like on the larger supermarket here, you can see that dumpster on the side. I think it's super cool. And then the shopping carts as well. And I'm really excited to see these types of structures start coming in at different sizes. And again, really making each of the neighborhoods unique and then attracting residents as well. So we've got a small one. You could call this second supermarket, maybe more of a medium.
Maybe a grocery store, or,
a grocery store. Yeah, the first one's a bodega. The second one's maybe a grocery store, and then we've got our Costco model. I'm calling this our Costco / Sam's Club,
which is this is a great segue also, like, to the ability for Upland as a platform to attract commercial brands as well to the metaverse. So this can be something that we see in the future.
Very cool. Very, very exciting. Closing thoughts before we move on here, Adon, anything you want to wrap up with residents in Upland?
I see it like, to me, the trifecta of what we already have together with residents, together with life, is the moment that Upland bursts, like, from an inanimate metaverse into a living metaverse. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, that's constantly changing as well. You're going to see residents moving and changing neighborhoods, especially if certain neighborhoods, maybe they start out strong and then another neighborhood is more enticing. And
by the way, in the future, and hopefully not too distant future, right, you can also visualize the amount of residents by animations that take place within their neighborhoods. So that would be all really something cool to look forward to.
Yeah, here's a future tripping question before we move on, actually, from Origins. Will stem growing plants allow harvest items to be sold at grocery stores?
Oh, yeah, this is so we always had the vision of you being able to go buy pet food for your cat in a supermarket. Now, where did that cat food come from, right? Like, whoever holds STEM would be able to repurpose and package it as NFT. So yes, this is a vision we've always had. I can't really say when it's gonna materialize, but absolutely, like we said, everything that makes cognitive sense will most likely be on the roadmap somewhere.
Yeah, very, very cool. Dirk, closing thoughts on residents before we move on here.
Now I want to see also maybe some how many did we have now? Six or eight, right? Examples of the first buildings. Where I want to also see maybe the community can also make suggestions, right? What else could be there, right? So it's not just us doing the proposals, and also saw a thing someone proposed, that also the community should actually design some of those new shops and whatever we're going to have there.
Yeah, that's a great point for basically the motivator of UGC, because again, once we put in the variety requirement, again, the way for you as a neighborhood to obtain an edge is to get as much as variety as you can. So in the future, we do envision creators to be able to contribute to specific types of buildings, and thus increase their edge with being able to add variety to their communities.
Yeah, really exciting. This is probably what I'm most excited for in Upland, even over life. I think this is, changes or evolves Upland into this next level. SimCity on steroids, I think, understates it, in my opinion. So very, very excited for this. Turns it into this living, breathing world. And you could see us setting up for that with POV mode, simplified travel, life, parks, voting, and finally residence. All ties together, all ties into this concept of gamification, of forging the infinite playground. That is the theme of not just Genesis Week, but of Upland more largely. So very, very exciting for this news. And now we are at the time that everybody has been waiting for, and that is to award our community awards to our nominees. Always a really fun time every single year. Everybody nominated obviously deserves to win. It's so hard to choose from all the nominees. So let's kick this off, everybody. Good luck to everybody. And thank you everyone for voting. Thank you everyone for nominating. And thank you for everyone who is on these nominees in each of the categories. You guys are what makes Upland special. And that's why we do these community awards. So first up, we have the Creator of the Year. Now, this is the badge. Each one of these slides, you'll see the badge that players will get for Creator, Broadcaster, and Player of the Year. Creators of the Year are our designers. These are the players who are creating the map assets that you see. These are the creators that are creating the structure ornaments that you see. These are the players that are really making Upland unique and diverse with all of their designs. And our nominees are Charles FR, Manu Mioto 21, Death Ender, and Ann2 Queen 2. Now, everybody knows all of these guys because, like I said, everybody knows all of their designs. And each one of these players absolutely deserves to win, but there could only be one winner. And the winner of Creator of the Year of 2025 is the one and only Charles FR. And Charles FR, congratulations. Congratulations. Here he is.
Thank you so much for this award. 1 year ago, I was stuck at home, recovering from a knee surgery. I couldn't move much, but I could learn. That's when I discovered Blender, and it changed everything. I started watching tutorials inspired by creators like T-Tech. Little by little, I began building, first for myself, then for others. Over the past year, I've created more than 500 models, go-karts, ornaments, map assets, and most importantly, I've built connection with players around the world. The US, Australia, of course, France, Italy, and many other time zones. Taking part in the Holiday Plaza Design Challenge gave me the opportunity to fully express my creativity in Upland, and it was even better seeing other players enjoy it. That work led me to win the challenge, and it's still one of my proudest moments in Upland. Other than that, I joined meetups in Paris, exchanged ideas with the French community, and even got to share feedback with Dirk directly, which really meant a lot. I do wish I could have met more players in person, hopefully at a future Genesis Week. This award means a lot. It's not just about the model, it's about the journey. From zero experience to this recognition, it's been a wide ride. Thank you, Upland. Thank you to the community for every vote, every conversation, every moment of support. Let's keep building, let's keep designing, and let's make the metaverse feel like home.
Congratulations, Charles FR. Well deserved. Congratulations. And thank you for all you do. And thank you for all of your amazing, over 500 creations. Like, well done. Absolutely pumping them out there. And again, congratulations to all the nominees for Creator of the Year, but especially to our winner, Charles FR. Next up is Broadcaster of the Year for our community awards. Again, this is the Broadcaster of the Year badge. It's with the year updated. Again, a very, very competitive category here. These are the guys who entertain you, who inform you, who unite you through their shows, through their content, through everything that they create. And here are our nominees. We've got the Upland property experts, the OGs. These guys have been doing it for 5 years. One of the first creators out there. Our current Broadcasters of the Year. We're very, very grateful for them and for everything they've done. The Upland Guide also been doing it for a while. Very the guy who if you have a question, you could go to his channel and he has guides there for everybody. YK 2012. Very grateful for him and everything he's done there. The Vulgar Uplanders, who Don was actually on their show this week. One of the most entertaining shows there. If you want to just hang out, have fun, talk games, talk Upland, this is the show for you. And last and of course, but not least, the Hyde Park Ninjas, who do regular shows. They do a show every Sunday. Just another great community point, informational. They've got a lot of projects going on in the community. They unite the community together. Again, anybody on this list does absolutely deserve to win. And it's a hard decision, but our Broadcaster of the Year for this year is, of course, the one and only Upland Guide. Congratulations, Upland Guide. Well done, well deserved. Creator of the Year 2025. Let's hear from him.
Thank you very much to the Upland team for recognizing me for the second time of being Uplanders Broadcaster of the Year, and of course to all of the Uplanders, OGs and newbies alike, who support my content, engage with it, and find value in it. I'm truly humbled to all of the support that you guys are giving me along the way, and I look forward to continuing to create more content and helping players to play, earn, and connect in the Upland metaverse. Just like every year, there's lots of promising new features that Upland is bringing into the metaverse, and I'm going to be here to help everyone along the way.
Congratulations again, YK 2012 and the Upland Guide. Well deserved. And again, congratulations to everybody who was nominated. Everyone absolutely deserves that as well. And last but not least, the ultimate reward, I think, or award rather, the ultimate community award. This is our Player of the Year award. This goes to players who are out there in the community, not just representing Upland, but also representing the community. These are players who connect each other. They connect communities, whether inside of Upland or outside of Upland. They are the ambassadors for Upland and the ambassadors for their communities. And our nominees for this year's Player of the Year award is Upland Terra, Matsudar, Shaktalin, and of course, Mass Chef. Again, each of them have contributed to Upland and the Upland community in huge ways. And everybody on this list deserves to win. But there can only be one winner for 2025, and that winner is, of course, Upland Terra. Congratulations, Upland Terra. Let's hear from her.
Being named Player of the Year means the world to me. It took time, hard work, and dedication. I showed up as myself, and I put my heart into it. Thank you for this incredible honor. To be recognized for that, as Upland Terra, is something that I will carry with me always. Upland has given me a space to imagine and create. To the Upland team, thank you for building a platform where I can grow, contribute, and find my place in Web3. And to this amazing community, thank you for the friendships, the laughs, and all the moments that have made this journey unforgettable. Upland is whatever you want it to be, whenever you want it to be, and wherever you want it to be.
And congratulations again. Congratulations to all of our 2025 community winners. Thank you for all of you, all you guys do. Without the community, Upland would not be here. Of course, Upland would not be Upland. So thank you. We love honoring you every
I have
single
to admit,
day.
I'm tearing up. I'm tearing up. By the way, I have to admit.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah, some of those videos.
It's not usual. Yeah.
Yeah, some of those videos they got to me, even going through them. So how it works is all of our nominees submit videos, and going through all of them, everybody, it really illustrates just how close knit this community is, and everything everyone does for it. So thank you to everybody. Thank you to the community. Genesis 2025 grand prize. It's here. It's time. This is to me. Correct me if I'm wrong, Don or Dirk, but I think this is the most exclusive prize we've given away. When we gave away a car, it was just the first car. More S1s came into it. Same with the plane. But this will be forever the only place where you can get sunflower seeds in Upland for the sunflower plant. It's exciting. It's huge.
Drum rolls.
Drum rolls, yeah. Drum rolls, please. Good luck. There are 8 entries. Everybody that is in this absolutely deserves to be in this. They were super active during Genesis week. They came in first place on multiple leaderboards. They participated. They were drawn. They were selected for the grand prize. Good luck to everybody. Let's go to the wheel spin. And congratulations, absolutely huge, big win there. All of your prizes will be dropped over the next couple days, over the coming week. That does us, everybody. That does us for Genesis Week 2025. Don, let's start with you. How was it? Another year down. We're already looking forward to next year, right?
Yeah. Of course, we're looking forward to next year, right? And I mean, it's been now 7 years since we started the company, and 6 years, since we launched. Probably told that story before, but when Idan came to me, I was doing something on the computer. I said, "We're ready," and he took his phone and actually took a video of it, right, to minting the first property back in San Francisco. So it was an unforgettable moment. But every Genesis, week is also unforgettable, I think, and it's so incredible how the whole community comes together, right? And speaking of that, I also have a favor for the community at the end of the day, because I saw that also in the comments, that sometimes people haven't been here or they came back. Right. I think what we should all try to do also, as you know, that we have almost 4 million accounts in Upland, is, let's try to get people back, because they should know also about Upland, right? They should know how it has evolved, right? Lots of people have joined in 2020 when there was, just property trading. I think they will be amazed how many more things they are able to do now, and how great this community is. So we're going to do our part of it. We're going to, try to rest them through emails, through socials and so on. But everyone in the community should also try to get people back, right? To really make this community grow a little bit further.
Don, Genesis Week 2025. Happy Genesis Week.
Happy Genesis Week. To be honest, that was the perfect ending note of what Dirk said. So I echo every word, and let's come together and make Upland 5 times bigger by next Genesis Week. Let's do it.
Okay, that's ambitious, but let's try.
I like ambitious.
Yeah, 100%. Everybody, thank you very much for tuning in live. This wraps up Genesis Week for us for 2025. Get ready for life. Get ready for residents. Get ready for targeted voting. There's a lot coming. It's exciting times. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great rest of your weekend. We'll see you guys in Upland. Bye-bye, everybody.